In this video, I'll be showing some glitches and oddities of Return to Champions for the Sega Genesis. Of course, these aren't all of the glitches this game has to offer, and I will test if they work in the Sega CD port. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing I should mention is that, like my inner strength video, at the top right is player 1's health, their chi, which is used to perform special moves, their stun, and right under that is player 2's. Now the first thing I want to talk about is Trident's death charge. Now this is done by holding X and Y at the same time, and for the duration, by hitting the opponent, or if the opponent hits you, they will get hit with a debuff that slows them down until the aura deactivates. And like I just said, if the opponent hits as well, it will still happen. But the interesting part about death charge is how it works against opponents who are buffed. For example, Shadow has a buff called Shadow Mode. For the duration, she will become a shadow and you cannot hit her for 5 seconds. But the interesting part about Shadow Mode is, if you use Shadow Mode while debuffed by this by Death Charge, so if I do it right here, instead of 5 seconds, it lasts for 10 seconds. So you can see that the debuff just went away, but Shadow Mode is still active. It's already been 5 seconds and it's still active. Okay, there we go. Now, the interesting part about this is, well, for one, it pretty much means that Shadow can actually counter Trident's debuff by like, okay, I got hit with the speed debuff, maybe activate Shadow Mode, and now I have even more iframes to fight with, which is really cool. Like, it's pretty much a counterplay in a sense, I guess. But the other interesting thing is that it's not like, it might be related to the speed debuff in specific, because if I try to do the same thing with his other debuff in which he has a red aura, and this lowers the opponent's attack for the duration, it doesn't work the same way. Like, I just activated Shadow Mode and it doesn't last 10 seconds, it just lasts 5 like the regular time. So it might really be a case of the speed specifically screwing up with the buff timing. So I think what's going on is that Shadow is quote unquote slowed down, and because it's like half speed, then instead of 5 seconds she gets 10 seconds of iframes. Again, I could be completely wrong, take it with a grain of salt. But I did think that this is thought that this was really interesting. So we've seen an example of how Death Charge can be a detriment to Trident. Now let me show an example of how if you get hit by this debuff, you shouldn't use a buff. That case being Jetta. So Jetta has a buff where if you hold X, Y, and Z at the same time, you'll move much faster. Now the interesting thing about this buff is she can also activate another buff which will like put a debuff on the opponent if she lands a hit. So let me show that one more time. So you hold X, Y, and Z, and then you hold A and C, and upon landing the hit, it will mess with their movement. And I should mention that while Jetta is buffed, if she gets hit or if she throws the opponent, it will end immediately. And of course, how it works when she does this while debuffed. So again, I'm going to activate Death Charge, which is X and Y for Trident. You just hold it. And if she activates her, I think it's called Resonate, which makes her faster, you see that it stops the debuff, but I'm back to normal speed and I cannot activate it right now. Why can't I activate it? Simple. Because it was actually still active that entire time. So let me show that one more time. So you get hit with the speed debuff, you get rid of it by responding with your speed buff of Jetta. But once the debuff ends, the game, you go back to normal speed and the game still thinks that you're in the buff, so you can't activate it again. And I know this is the case because not only do you see that animation of her Resonate ending, but when this whole thing happens, you can still activate the second part of the buff where she starts blinking green. Again, like this buff in particular can only be active if the first one is active, the one with the speed boost I should say. So yeah, it's pretty interesting that Trident's Death Charge can technically benefit the opponent, and it could also really screw up the opponent if they try to like buff against it, which is the case right here. Now another funny thing I want to show off is the double jump glitch. I'd love to assume that this wasn't intentional, but it is something you can do. Now I didn't test this with all characters, but I did test it with Blade and Trident, and to do the double jump you have to simply input up forward right when you activate the buff. So for Blade, he has a personal shield where you hold 3 buttons and he gets a damage reduction, and for Trident it could be Death Charge. I'm pretty sure it can work with his other buffs too, but the easiest way to pull this off is to hold the buttons to activate the buff before the round starts and hold up forward. So I'm going to do that right now. And you can see that I jumped twice immediately. Like I held X, Y, and Z before the round started, and I held up and forward, and I was able to perform a double jump with Blade. And it's not something you have to do at round start. Again, you can actually do it in neutral. So like by timing it so that you're holding up forward, like right when you do the buff, you can actually do a double jump, which I'm going to try to do right here. There we go. So you can see I did a neutral jump and then I did a forward jump right after. So I'm sure there's ways to like maybe buffer it, like maybe you whip a normal and then you try to do it. But sometimes, as you can see right there, that if you do it right after whiffing a normal, you get more recovery frames, I think. So like if I try to mash after this, let me see. So I'm going to hold X and Y. Oh, that time it didn't. Yeah, so I had a little bit more recovery frames, I think. I could be wrong, but yeah, if you can get the timing down, or you know, a guaranteed way to do it outside of round start, characters like Blade and Trident can perform a double jump by activating their buff and jumping at the same time. So this one might be more of an oversight or a glitch, I don't know, but Xavier has a move called Attract and Smack, where he will pull the opponent in and he will hit them back, which deals a little bit of damage. It doesn't deal a lot, but it is damage. The interesting part is that if you do this move against someone like Shadow while she's sliding in, so if I try to time it right here, I might have to like make a save state of me performing it, so I'm going to save it right here. And if this hits while Shadow is sliding forward, sometimes it would just deal 0 damage. Like right there. So you can see that the animation is different. She's now mid-air. So I guess maybe it's a counter hit situation, I don't know. And he smacks her back and it dealt 0 damage. Whereas like, even if I'm just standing or if I'm just crouching, it still deals damage, but during this animation in particular, and maybe even different animations, it can just flat out deal 0 damage. Now I'll probably have to test this more, because there were times where like I triggered this weird anomaly by like just crouching, like getting up from crouch or down to crouch, I don't know. So I do have to test this further, but I just wanted to show that it can indeed happen that his move would just deal 0 damage. Also, I should mention that in one of my previous videos, I showed off this quote-unquote combo where when Xavier stuns you with this move, he can keep throwing heavy punches from far away. And in the video, I said that I was stand blocking with player 2 and it still comboed, but if I crouch block with player 2, it didn't combo after the first hit. And I don't know if I either triggered a weird situation or I just flat out wasn't holding block, because if I hold block with player 2 right now, they can clearly block it. Like I was stand blocking there, so I don't know why in the video that I was, maybe I just wasn't stand blocking, who knows, but I just wanted to clarify that like you can actually stand block after the first far heavy punch with Xavier's stun combo, quote unquote, or you can just crouch block it like right here. So because he can't combo after the far standing heavy punch, he can instead combo into a throw. So another one of Trident's auras is called the Bio Stun, where he holds A and B at the same time. He will glow green, and if he hits the opponent, or if the opponent hits him, they will be stunned. So to show an example, you're gonna see Midnight here like throw the opponent, whoa, and he's stunned because he damaged Trident. But there is some cool counterplay to this, because the opponent will only get stunned if the aura is still active. So what Midnight can do is he can pretty much, he can do a grab like this, go into his smoke form, he's considered quote unquote invincible, and he's not stunned. You clearly saw him hit Trident. In fact, I'll show it one more time. Just, I'm gonna grab him, and then I'm gonna go into iframes because I can't get hit, I'm not considered neutral, and he's not stunned. So I wanted to show a cool example that you can actually do some kind of counterplay when it comes to situations like that, where Trident can just like, oh, I'm scared to hit him because if I hit him I get stunned, but you can actually play around it, which is really cool. And yeah, that's just about it for Trident. Something I forgot to mention about Trident is how his aura can be stopped by Splash specifically, because I already showed that like if he has a aura active and you try to throw him, you still get debuffed, like you'll still have the blue aura around him. But for some reason, when it comes to Slash in particular, like you can see that Trident activates his thing, and Slash's grabs actually just deactivates the aura immediately. Like you can see he has a red aura, doesn't matter. Slash this does not care. So, I mean, I didn't test every single grab, but when it comes to Slash in particular, if Trident tries to activate an aura against him, like it really doesn't do anything because Slash can just turn it off with a throw. Like even if that one whiffs. Now the next character I want to talk about is Blade, and specifically his personal shield and his power drain. So his personal shield is done by holding all 3 punch buttons, which is X, Y, and Z, and this will make all attacks deal half damage. At least that's what the manual says, but there is a caveat to this. So what I'm going to do is activate personal shield, and actually before I even show this example, let's get his health low, right? So let's get it to like, what's a good number? Okay, so his health is at 16. So I'm going to make a save state over here, and I'm going to reload the save state where he has full health, and I'm going to perform this move right here where she throws a homing shuriken. That dealt about 18 damage, right? Because you can see that it went from 104 at the top right, and now it went to 86. However, if he activates personal shield and I activate this move, it half the damage. That looks correct, right? I mean, instead of 86, he now has 95. So, in theory, surely, if I activate personal shield, then this will not kill, right? Except it did. The reason why this is happening is because this shield does not it technically halves the damage, but not in the way you expect. So the best way to show this is frame by frame. So you can see that personal shield is active, and I want you to look at the top right for player 1's health. You can see that's at 104. So I'm going to go frame by frame. We're going to look for the frame where he gets hit. The exact frame is coming. There it is. His health says 86 on this exact frame, the first frame where he gets hit. But if I go 1 frame forward, it says 95. The personal shield does not half your damage by 50%. It actually recovers the damage you've taken by 50% of the original damage a frame after the damage happened. Because of this, the personal shield cannot save you from moves that would kill you otherwise. Now to get into Blade's power drain. So this move will have him drain the opponent's inner strength. So you can see that he throws a wire out there, though of course I have to do it at like max distance. There we go. And during this move he will drain their chi. You can see that player 2's is going down and his is going up. And he has 87 right now. Now there are multiple interesting things about this. First off, the maximum inner strength you can have is 52, no matter what, like supposedly, right? And because the maximum is technically 52, the game is looking at Blade's chi right now and is like, wait a minute, it is not at 52. And if you've seen one of my past videos, you'll know that inner strength recovers like by a certain amount every 3 seconds. The amount depends on the character, but almost every 2 to 3 seconds it recovers. Because his inner strength is not at 52, it goes back down to 52. Even though it was higher, but it wasn't 52, so it just goes straight back down to 52, which is the supposed maximum. What this means is, assuming Blade like lands this move and the opponent doesn't wiggle out of it with left and right, he has to start using his chi before the regeneration happens, because by using up your chi and whatever, you know, performing special moves like activating the aura, it'll reset the regeneration timer. Therefore, you can actually get something out of the extra inner strength that you actually absorb from the opponent. So it's really cool that, like, I mean, it's weird that it goes back down to like the maximum amount, because like this is not the maximum amount at all. Like you know, like having 92, I should say. But it is cool that you can still make use of that before the regeneration happens. So I thought that was kind of neat. I might actually, if I ever land this against the TPU, I would take advantage of it. But yeah, that's just something you can do with Blade's power drain. Now, last but not least, after talking about the most interesting glitch that this game has to offer, well, okay, I wouldn't say the most interesting glitch, you know, it's not like I figured out every glitch in this game. I'm sure there's many more that's even more crazy. But this is definitely a case of player 2 having an advantage over player 1. So, I mentioned that Jetta has a buff where she holds all 3 punch buttons and she moves faster, and by holding light kick and heavy kick, which is A and C, she will blink rapidly, and if you hit the opponent during this animation, they will stutter, like it'll be hard for them to move around. The interesting part is how it works on the player 2 side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use player 1's buff, and then we're going to activate the second version, hit the opponent with the debuff, and you can see that they're crouch blocking. I'm trying to hit them with heavy kick up close, and even though it shows them fidgeting around like they can barely move or crouch, you can see that they're clearly able to block the heavy kicks. Now if player 2 does this, buff up and then a second one, hit the opponent with the debuff, and then they try to hold down back, all of a sudden they get a bunch of nasty unblockables with heavy kick alone. Like you can see that, like I'm gonna test it again, like if I use the regular version of this buff, nothing's happening. Like the player 1's perfectly fine. But by using the debuffed version where you hit them with this and then you go in, player 1 can't block this. And this isn't just a Jetta mirror. All it takes is just for player 2 Jetta to use, you know, player 2 Jetta to just buff up 1, 2, land the debuff, and then it works. And again, it's not side specific either. Like even if player 1's like on this side, it will still work. But yeah, this is player 2 only, and there's not much player 1 can do about this. This is just something they have to accept. So if you're ever playing this game against your friends and you're on the player 2 side and you just want to land some nasty unblockables, if you're able to land this debuff, which isn't the easiest thing to do because yeah, you are fast, but again, throwing will deactivate it immediately and you getting hit will deactivate it. Like again, like even if I like do this and not draw the opponent, like it just deactivates both buffs, right? But if you can't put yourself in a situation where you buff up and then you hit the debuff, the match can technically be yours, assuming the opponent isn't able to match out of this. Again, this might require more testing, but this does work against other characters as well. And yeah, it's just something that player 1 Jetta just can't do. In any case, that's all I have to say for this video. I'm sure there are many more glitches and oddities this game has to offer. I just wanted to go over some of the ones that I bumped into while playing against a dummy and playing against the CPU. And yeah, with that said, I'll see you later.